probably just going to click off the video as I go through the slides, just to save any distraction, and then I'll open it up, obviously, at the end for questions. So most businesses want to ensure that the impact of the current situation is minimised for stakeholders, whilst obviously we're balancing the desire to secure its survival for when things are more back to normal, subject, of course, to what the normal will look and feel like. I think it's fair to say that many businesses are having to consider the real prospect of mothballing their operations for a currently uncertain period of time. There are clearly a lot of challenges in this respect, and the majority of businesses will never have faced this before. I certainly do not envy some of these difficult decisions business owners are currently facing. And as many business owners just don't know where to start with such a process, I thought it would be useful to provide some practical considerations and a summarised proposed approach if you or your clients are faced with the prospect of a temporary closure or suspension of trade. As part of this, I will cover off some of the points that we are currently discussing with our clients. Now, this is not meant to be exhaustive, and every business is different. However, it should give you a structure to navigate through the current challenges being faced in a business. Whilst it may seem obvious, it is worth remembering that the objective of the process is to reduce cash outgoings to a level that can be sustained by using banking facilities or through continued receipt of income, if any. Now, ideally, the business needs to try to ensure that it will retain sufficient funds to allow it to restart operations once it is able to do so. The nature and method of obtaining government support is under constant review, and this undoubtedly will help ease pressure in the longer term. However, with the exception of the job retention scheme and certain smaller business grants, the majority of this has been in the form of loans. Consequently, minimising the level of debt carried within the business may be important for the long term. Clearly, cash flow is the critical area that drives other activities. So it's important for businesses to fully understand what its obligations are. The first stage is therefore to pull together a list of parties that would normally be paid. Pull together a list of direct debits and standing orders, the amounts and dates that are due to be paid. Print out an up-to-date creditor listing that's aged, and then consider other regular payments that may not be on those lists, for example, rent, insurance, rates, and subcontractors. Look at what supplies or services are needed over the next few months and obtain a list of employees, roles, and costs. Now, putting employees to one side for the moment, the list of payments needs to be carefully reviewed to consider how critical the payments are. Are they needed to preserve the business over the next few months? This is not whether they may take legal action, but does the business need them on a practical level? Payments that may fall into this category could include insurance, employee pension deductions, sellable stock due to arrive, anything health and safety related, and IT systems. Once you have a list of high priority payments, double check that they are really critical. Cancel any non-critical standing orders and direct debits. Now consider if there are any employees that have to be retained to work during the period. Such employees could include credit control to chase existing debts, someone to manage cash flow, payroll, and security, for example. Take advice as to mechanisms for laying off workers, either permanently by means of redundancy or temporarily by furloughing employees under the job retention scheme, and establish the process for reducing hours to a minimal level for those retained. Any changes to their terms and conditions require employee consent. Therefore, being transparent with the employee group and consulting with them will be an important part of the process. Most employees that I've spoken to are sympathetic to their employers' issues, and whilst they are concerned about their own cash flow position, they understand that in the long term it is better to have a job to go back to. Consideration can be given to incentives to employees, such as bonuses at some point in the future once it returns to profitability, should the employees support the business through its challenges. Once the critical payments are established, consideration must be given to how to deal with non-critical payments. In this respect, it is important to be as transparent and fair as possible, since many of these parties will themselves be facing a similar crisis. It may be necessary to make payments to these parties for both practical and ethical reasons, but it is important to ensure that the level of outgoings matches the funding or the cash the business has available at this time. The banks have stated that they will be supportive during this period, so they should be contacted to seek agreement to a repayment holiday, ideally interest and capital. Whilst landlords hold an element of power in the current situation, commercially they will not want to be left with empty property. Therefore, negotiate with the landlord and consider things as an example as a rent-free period, rent reduction, rent deferment, smaller regular payments, an extension to the lease to compensate for these deferrals or reductions. Until the 30th of June, no business will automatically forfeit their lease, nor will they be forced off their premises if they miss a rent payment. However, the liability does continue to accrue. HMRC are being supportive at this time, offering time to pay arrangements in relation to existing debts. In addition, there will be an automatic VAT deferral for the period from the 20th of March to the 30th of June. Make sure you file returns on time and cancel your direct debit so that HMRC do not attempt to automatically collect upon receipt of your VAT return. Most suppliers will be in the same position as you are and will not be looking to take legal action to recover debts at this point. Try, where possible, to get agreement as to how the balances will be dealt with. For example, it may be that you agree that when loan funding is available, you will look to recommence payments to them. Where possible and practical, consider returning assets to the lease company or place lease assets into a secure location. Seek repayment holidays in relation to ongoing payments. Now, support in relation to business rates has been announced for retail, hospitality and leisure sectors and nurseries, and grant funding for small businesses that already pay little or no business rates because of small business rate relief, rural rate relief and tapered relief. And I see that the Chambers has issued further guidance on that this morning and starting to see payments now coming through. Now, it is usually necessary to maintain power and water supply to properties even during a period of mothballing. Utility companies may be supportive of cash flow issues, and the usage during mothballing will, of course, be significantly reduced. So we would suggest that businesses ask for any outstanding balances to be placed on hold for a number of months and potentially small payments made to cover ongoing use, so that their position does not deteriorate. Now, I expect to see some intervention from the government at some stage to protect businesses from termination of supply, similar to what I see that is provided in the current insolvency legislation. The government declared coronavirus a notifiable disease, a key criteria to allow business interruption insurance claims. However, the Association of British Insurers has indicated that many businesses lack the appropriate cover in their policies. It is worth confirming your position with your insurance broker. Credit insurers have indicated that they will be supportive and work with businesses, including the extension of terms on an individual basis, although certain insurers are notifying customers operating within high-risk industries of cancellation of cover. Again, it's worth confirming your position with the insurance broker and ensuring that you adhere to the process for notifying claims. Whilst mothballing by nature means their income will be curtailed, ensure that any funds due to be received are chased and agreements reached for repayment. Whilst it's a difficult call to make, try to establish whether non-payers can't pay or won't pay, and consider more robust action for the latter category. Consider what funds you and other shareholders are willing and able to commit to the business in the short term to support it through its difficulties. Whilst lenders are supportive, they will look more favourably on businesses where the owners themselves demonstrate financial commitment. Look at your existing debt funding structure and contact your lenders to establish what support they are able to provide in terms of extending or retaining facilities. Check out the regular changes and updates on the government support website as to the support that is being made available to help businesses through this time, and whether your business meets the eligibility criteria for a coronavirus business interruption loan. During this period, you should be as transparent as possible as to the financial position of the business and the level of ongoing support that may be required. Don't leave any funding requests to the last minute, as lenders themselves are likely to have a lot of customers in similar situations, and decisions to extend facilities may not be instant. Ensure that you have access to management information and forecasts, as an application for debt funding is likely to require recent management accounts and financial detail generally. Now, I've just set out here just some of the more practical matters to consider, particularly where you have got a temporary suspension or closure. So some very key in terms of ensuring that you have secured with the property and complying with any insurance terms regarding those properties that are not in use. I would say set up communications systems for employees and other stakeholders, and make sure you provide regular updates to employees and stakeholders, even if there is nothing to report. Now, a full range of business support measures have been made available to UK businesses and employees by the government. And the link that I have on this slide helps businesses find out how to access the support that has been made available, who is eligible, when the scheme's open, and how to apply. The government is also working closely with business representative organisations and trade associations to support the national response to coronavirus, including ensuring messages from government are heard by all businesses and that business voices are heard by government. In addition, other public bodies, organisations and charities have produced additional resources that may be useful to employees. And these are all listed on that government link, and you'll see a link also to the British Chambers of Commerce. We've set up a coronavirus hub on our website, and this contains guidance on how to access the assistance available during this time. It includes information on engaging with lenders and meeting the eligibility criteria for a business interruption loan, the tax reliefs available, VAT deferral, job retention, and importantly, managing your people during this time. Our content is updated daily in light of new information and announcements that will help you navigate your business through this crisis. Through this site, we will endeavour to keep you informed with useful advice and legislation and the economic impact on businesses as we all adapt to this rapidly changing environment. If you or client need support during these times, please contact me or speak to the Chamber to get in touch with us. And I've set out just on the next slide some contact details for me. Now, I'm conscious there's probably going to be a number of questions, so I wanted to give as much time to the webinar for those questions. So Henriette, can I open up the questions, please?
You can indeed. I've just been putting my Q&A back on. So the time is now, folks, if you're still listening. There's a chat box to the right-hand side of your screen. I can see a couple of you are typing right now. Put your questions in there. I'll relay them to Diana. While you are typing there, a couple of quick questions from me. First up, you're speaking to a lot of clients at the moment about exactly these issues. What are you finding are the most common questions or issues that businesses are encountering at the moment?
I think we've seen the kind of tide change, I'd say, over the last week. So as you appreciate, if we go back to a week or 9 days ago, actually there was very little information other than some headline announcements from government in terms of what support would be available and how businesses would be able to access that support and whether or not they'd be eligible. As we've seen the week continue, we've seen far greater guidance, particularly on the job retention scheme, which is being used by a lot of businesses right now, and a useful tool in terms of giving businesses that kind of steady state, that freeze frame, and that time that they need to consider where their business will be moving forward in these uncertain times. And also in terms of what we call the C-bills, so the business interruption loans, we're seeing a lot more guidance now coming, not just from British Business Bank, but more importantly from the lenders that will be offering those loans as well. I've been, really kind of overwhelmed with just how well some of these businesses are dealing with such really challenging decisions, and how they're taking a very pragmatic approach to that, and almost using us as a sounding board in terms of this is my intention. Does this sound right? Have I missed anything material significant? Have I missed an opportunity to gain access to funding or a loan or grants that I haven't yet appreciated? So we're trying as much as we can to be in communication with all our clients on a regular basis, and most people are just welcoming the opportunity to have those discussions over the phone.
Fantastic. We have now had a flurry of questions, and I will stress to everyone listening, while Diana is an expert, she's not an expert in absolutely everything. So if there is something that you've asked that she's not able to answer, we'll look into that for you outside of this. Yeah. And we have also got further webinars coming up with employment law experts, for instance, where you'll be able to ask more technical questions. But first up, we have a question from Arith, which actually I do know the answer to if you don't. Do we know if the business grants have come through for Birmingham?
Yes, well, we had the announcement, didn't we, earlier today from Paul Faulkner, and if anyone's not seen that, do go either on LinkedIn or go onto the website, the Chamber's website, and there's a full list as well of the councils that are issuing those. So it's good to see that moving now.
Yeah, so to elaborate on that one, the funding is coming through to local authorities' bank accounts by tomorrow. The issue then is them getting that out to businesses. So local authorities don't actually have full business bank account details for every single ratepayer that falls into these applicable categories. So that's businesses who receive small business rate relief or have a rateable value of under £51,000 or are in the retail, leisure and hospitality sector. So those are the businesses that qualify for the grants, but local authorities don't necessarily have all the details they need to make payments. So those local authorities are going to be getting in touch with anyone that they don't have the details for over the coming weeks. And as Diana has pointed out in our Chamber Link Daily today and up on the Chamber website, there's an article which also includes links to the local authorities that have got those forms up on their website already for where to go to put in your business bank account details if you think you should be receiving those grants. So keep an eye. I've just seen someone's put in the box that they can't hear me. I will send him a link, so he's got the link to that. And as I say, those initial payments, the businesses that they have got the details for, should start coming through from next week, but it may be a few weeks before everyone receives it. Some local authorities have tens of thousands of records to go through and update. Cool. So that is the grants. Next question is a technical question on furloughing. So Robert's asked, can I bring staff back from furlough if remaining staff have to isolate?
So in terms of the way that the furlough scheme works is the employees go on furlough because there's no requirement for them to work. So essentially, the minute that you feel that there isn't a requirement for them to come into work and be available for work, you can take them off the scheme. Now, if that means that you've got others in self-isolation, then it's going to practically depend on where they're coming into the business and how you can adhere with the government's guidelines in terms of the social distancing, and also bearing in mind the health and safety of those workers in terms of the environment that they're in. And that must be, of utmost priority for those individuals and that staff welfare.
Fantastic. Robert, I hope that answers your question. Next question from James. So for those businesses who are not eligible for business rate holidays or grants, are local authorities amenable to discussions about payment deferrals? I mean, Diana, I don't know if this is something you've come across in your work or perhaps one for another expert at another time.
Yeah, I mean, it sits alongside the discussions that are had in terms of dealing with each of the payments, and I think you should treat the rating authority the same as how you treat another landlord or other organisation that you're requiring some ongoing support with. Now, it's going to be very difficult, clearly, for authorities to take a blanket approach to this and set a precedent. But you would hope that there was flexibility and they would take into account the sector and of course what that business does in that particular authority. Henrietta, I don't know if you've seen anything else, certainly from a Chamber's perspective.
Well, certainly the feedback we're getting from local authorities is understanding how much of an issue it is and wanting to get more support to businesses. Something to be aware of that already exists is discretionary rate relief. You can apply to your local authority for discretionary business rates relief. It's not necessarily going to be a quick process, but if you go to gov.uk and look at the types of business rate relief available, you can find out a bit more information about what that involves there. So there is something that's not related to coronavirus, but is aimed at businesses that are in distress being able to apply for discretionary rates relief from their local authority. Yeah,
and I think it's probably fair to say, isn't it, as with everything, that there is a bit of a time lag, which is, critical for everyone in terms of managing their cash flow. But just to appreciate that, but also in terms of, start the process. The sooner you start it, the sooner you get yourselves into the system.
Brilliant. So next question from Robert. What defines retail? He's using the example of they're a builder's merchant.
Well, I haven't got the actual classification of retail in terms of that specific, so I'm more than happy to take that offline in terms of what that classification is.
Yeah, I imagine it's linked to your SIC code. Am I going to get this right? Something industry classification code.
Yeah, that's
it. So, so do check what your SIC code is, and through that you should be able to find out if you're classified as retail. It sounds as though you may well be if your primary job is retailing goods.
Well, yeah, you'd assume as well, Henrietta, that it's, if it's actually service where there is contact and you can no longer provide that service because of that contact, then that would give a strong indication.
Brilliant. So next question from Timo. Do I understand the government's guidance correctly that the minimum period an employee can be furloughed for is 3 weeks?
But yes, from what I understand, the start in terms of the start date, so the employee has to be in employment at the 28th of February. If they'd been made redundant at the 28th of February, the business can actually take them off redundancy, bring them back into employment, and they can be eligible for the scheme. And it would be a minimum 3 week cycle, essentially because there will be a lag between when the payments are made to the employees, and it's the employer's responsibility to make those payments to the employees, and then the lag in which the scheme and HMRC will refund the element of the 80% up to £2,500 to that employer.
Great. Andrew here has highlighted a bit of a gap available in support, which is that they're both of pensionable age, so do not qualify for grants, universal credit or assistance with rent, but feel they've fallen through the cracks as they do not pay business rates and work from home. Andrew, what I'd ask you to do, and anyone else who's listening who is in that situation, you're falling through the gaps in support, please contact KBM at birmingham-chamber.com. That's KBM at birmingham-chamber.com, or your relationship manager, and send us a case study, because we are undertaking a lot of lobbying at the moment to point out where those gaps are and lobby for bringing forward more flexible funds for people who are experiencing hardship, people and businesses that are falling through the gaps in support. We're very aware there's quite a lot of those. Another one, of course, being businesses that rent and do not pay business rates directly. They pay them to their landlords, so don't qualify for the current grants that are coming forward. As I say, if you're in that camp, if you're listening and you're falling through the gaps, get in touch, because we're doing a lot of lobbying to try and get those gaps filled. Also,
just add on to that, Henrietta, that just in terms of the link that I mentioned, in terms of when you go on the government support website, there's a link to all those different bodies and trade associations. So there's a lot of sector-specific ones on there. So if you have sector-specific issues that you do feel the need to have that support for lobbying, then do go onto those links, onto those websites, and make use of them.
Great. Robert, following up on your question about retail, just to draw to your attention, James has added to the chat that regarding retail definition, it may also depend on the building use class. So worth checking that, particularly, I guess, in relation to those business rates linked grants. So do check that out as well. Right, we're coming to the end of the questions on the chat. I do have a couple more, but if you've got any questions that spring to mind, please do stick them in the chat box now. I asked you earlier, Diana, what the most common questions you're getting from businesses are. Is there anything that you're sort of surprised isn't being asked about, or you think perhaps it hasn't got at businesses' radars yet that should do?
I think the questions are evolving. I mean, we are also trying to kind of preempt some of the questions, some of the queries in terms of how you deal with supply chain management, just in terms of stress testing and scenario planning, which perhaps businesses haven't really had to face before. So where we can, we are trying to preempt some of those inquiries. A lot of it is around just education at the moment. So in terms of, the loans, we're now not just about, well, how do I get this loan, but also, well, what's my plan B? So again, we're preempting in terms of what you should be doing in terms of contingency planning and seeking other alternative finance if it can't be through a business interruption loan, as an example. What we're doing as well is to help with those discussions with clients, is we're collating feedback from each of the lenders and asset-based lenders that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, across the UK, if not locally in Birmingham, just so that we can let everyone know in terms of what their responses are, what their appetite is in terms of new loans outside of the government schemes, because there is still appetite there.
Fantastic, thank you. And I think, looking at the chat, everyone has asked their questions. If not, speak now, forever hold your peace. So I will leave you with one final question then, Diana, which was, if you could give just one piece of advice to everyone taking part in this webinar, what would it be?
Times like this, it's important, obviously, to stay calm in terms of the position, to look past the challenges that you face today, and look to the future in terms of how you can build and protect for tomorrow, and just talk. Make sure that you're not carrying this on your own. There is plenty of support out there. You're surprised how many people actually are thriving to have conversations. We're all in the same boat. We all feel isolated in our environment because it's different to what we're used to. So do not carry it on your shoulders on your own. There is support out there, and everyone is open and willing and wanting to provide that to you.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Well, continuing that theme of reaching out and asking for support, thank you very much to everyone who took part in today's webinar. Please do make sure you keep in touch with your relationship manager at the Chamber. If there is anything we can do to support you, we will do our utmost to try and do it. This is an incredibly challenging and fast-moving time for businesses, and we really want to make sure we're doing everything in our power to continue to help connect, support and grow you through this and beyond. And believe it or not, there will be a beyond. So thank you all very much for joining us. If you have any questions, please do get in touch via email, and I look forward to seeing you on future webinars.